So we will be talking about EC2 in this class. EC2 stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. EC2 is one of the most basic services of AWS. It is such a basic service of AWS that generally whenever you refer to AWS, people will generally assume that you are talking about EC2. So what is EC2 in the first place? Examples of EC2 are: you say that I need to work on a computer which is working on Windows Server 2016 and I need to install a specific software inside that particular machine. In that scenario, so we were talking about EC2. So inside EC2, what is EC2 first of all? So EC2 actually means a computer, a server, a laptop, a virtual machine, a container, whatever you might want to call it. But what will you do with a virtual machine? First answer, you might be working for a database company or you might be working on a database. In that case, you will need to install the database software inside that machine. Second example, you might have gone and hosted your own website. You want that website to work 24 cross 7 cross 365. If the same thing you try to do it inside your own machine, it might be a problem. In that case, you can take help of EC2. EC2 basically means that this particular computer is available to you 24 cross 7 cross 365. Now inside this computer, you can go and install anything that you can think of. It's the same as your computer which you are using at the moment. Now, if you say that I am using Windows, yes, you can go and create a machine which is same as your Windows machine. Let's check that out first of all. And we will also go and have a look at US East one for one small reason. So let's say that you say that I am working on Windows, no worries. I can launch Windows Server 2019, Windows Server 2004, 2016, or any of the servers 2012. I can just go click on select over here and create this machine over here. You say I'm not working on Windows, rather I am working on Ubuntu. No worries, you can go and search for Ubuntu. You see all the versions of Ubuntu coming up over here. You say I'm working on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, RHEL. You can go and type for that. You can see it over here. Or let's just go and type red and you can see RHEL or Red Hat Enterprise Linux, commonly known as RHEL. So basically, your EC2 is your computer in which AWS will just go and install our operating system and give it across to you. The same thing you can understand if you think you go to buy a laptop, they give you a laptop and you say, please install this particular operating system inside that. They go and install it and give the laptop to you. Now you are free to do whatever you want with that laptop. You can install any software, you can remove any software and so on. But there's a difference between that laptop and EC2 instance. EC2 instance, you can terminate now and you don't have to pay me anything. That laptop, if you buy, or that server, if you buy, you have to keep it with you. Inside EC2, I don't have to pay anything upfront. You use it for 1 month, give me for 1 month. You use it for 2 minutes, just give me the pricing for 2 minutes. There you have to pay everything upfront. So EC2 actually at the end of the day is just a simple computer which has been given to you, or a simple server which has been given to you with the base configuration, whatever you have asked. Now you might say that, okay, I have a Windows, I can see that, I see Ubuntu. Also, what if I need CentOS or any specific version? You don't have it, fair enough. You can always go to your marketplace and you can find those particular operating systems here also. You have CentOS 7, CentOS 6, CentOS 8, and so on. You can keep on going down and you can see that those things or those particular operating systems are available inside your AWS marketplace. Finally, you might have a question that, fine, Windows good, Unix or Linux good, I need a Mac system. Problem with Mac is that you need to have a specialized Mac hardware for that. So until you go and buy a MacBook, you cannot go and run Mac inside your local machine, because Mac does not comes as a OS. It is a combination of hardware and software both. This was true until December of last year. After that, if you go to North Virginia, okay, first of all, if you go and search for Mac over here inside Windows, you won't find anything because it's not there only. Okay, so even if you go over here and you see Mac, you won't find anything with Mac. However, starting from December last year, if you go to your North Virginia, US East one, you will see that Mac OS also has started over here. So you have Mac OS also, you have Linux also, you have RHEL, SUSE, Ubuntu, Windows, and whatever operating system you can think of. AWS generally has all the operating systems, whatever you may need. So in this case, AWS can give you a machine of your choice with the base operating system of your choice. This thing is also known, by the way, as IaaS, infrastructure as a service, where I am giving you the basic hardware to run, and that is going to cost you some amount. Next, when I say it is going to cost you some amount, first thing is, how much is it going to cost me? The answer to that is, you can always go to your AWS calculator and see for that. Going back, if you say I have to look at the pricing, how much will it cost you? Let me ask you this. If you go and buy a laptop from Amazon, how much is it going to cost you? You will say it depends on the configuration. In case of AWS also, it depends on the configuration. Whether you are going for 4 CPU, 4 GB RAM, or 8 CPU, 16 GB RAM, or 96 CPU, 768 GB of RAM, each thing is going to have its own cost. It depends on you, how you plan to use that particular hardware. You just tell AWS, I need this particular machine. AWS is going to go and give you that machine of your choice. Now, when I say AWS is going to give you a machine, what machine is it going to give you? Introducing the first topic in AWS, something known as instance types. Before we start with instance types, let's understand one basic things about the computers or servers. The computer that you are working on right now at this very moment, in all probability, will have a x86 processors. These are the Intel or the AMD processors which are there inside your laptops at the moment. These are known as x86. Earlier, you also had something as i386 processors. They are continued now. So until you have a computer which is more than 15 years old, you will always be having a x86 underscore 64 processor. But why did I say your computer and not your mobile phones? The reason is mobile phones have a different architecture. That architecture is known as ARM processors. So it works on the concept of CISC or RISC. CISC is the complex instruction set, RISC is the reduced instruction set. Just understand in very basic terms, just understand that x86 processors are better performing, they consume more power, and they generate more heat. That is why the adapter of your laptop is pretty big. Your laptop becomes heated very soon, and it is also way faster than your cell phone. Your cell phone, on the other hand, works on a smaller battery, which means it consumes less power. It also generates less heat. If your mobile phone also was having the x86 processor, imagine that heat inside your mobile phone and it is kept inside your pocket. You will be burnt completely because of that heat. That's the reason why any of the cell phones or any of the mobile devices actually have the ARM processors and not the x86. Laptops, on the other hand, have the privileges of being x86 processors. So this x86 processors, in short, are the complex processors which generate more heat, generate or assume or take more power, more heat, and are faster. ARM, on the other hand, will consume less power. They will have low speed as compared to the x86, and they will also generate less heat as compared to your x86 processors. That is why the ARM processors are used inside your mobile phones at this very moment. This statement was again true until October of last year when Apple introduced their own processors. Now, new MacBooks are not made on x86, rather, they are made on ARM processors. And as per what Apple says, those processors are almost equal or faster than x86 processors. That is why, if you see, these MacBooks will say that we last more as compared to your normal MacBooks. The reason is they work on ARM processors, which are actually consuming less power and less heat. This thing is important to know because whenever you install a software inside your machine, the biggest thing that you should worry about is the architecture. If your processor itself is x86 and you try to work on or install a software meant for ARM, it's not going to work. By that same logic, your Windows software wouldn't have worked inside your Windows phone because one is made for x86 and one is made for ARM. So that's the basic difference. Now, why is this such a big deal, x86 and ARM, and why are we investing so much time into this at the moment? The reason for that is the world or the biggest companies in the world now are transitioning to ARM processors. Apple already has introduced it, ARM processors in the latest MacBooks. AWS also has done it. These instances are known as the Graviton instances. They are your T4 instances, M6 instances, R6 instances, and C6 instances. We are going to talk about it very shortly. Before that, first of all, let's see the architecture. Now I believe you understand that this T2 Nano, which has one CPU, half GB RAM, works both on i386 and x86. By that logic, T3 works on x86. If you go down, you will find the new instance, which is T4 also. T4 is obviously working on your ARM64 because that's the newest generation. Which means, actually, if you see, the generations are built like this. First you had T2, then you had T3, then you have T4. So T2, TT, T3, T4. Similarly, you can have M3, M4, M5, M6. Now, what is this T over here and what is this C over here? What is this M over here? We are going to understand it. But right now, just remember that if you see a C5 over here, the older generation will be C4 and the older generation will be C3 and the older will be C2 and C1 and so on. But you might say that I am not seeing only C3 and C2 and C1 over here. The reason for that is not all the instances across all the regions have the same instances. For example, what do I mean by that? Let's have a look at Mumbai over here. It says that the total instance types which are possible is 236. Inside North Virginia, this happens to be around 300. So in Mumbai, you have 236. Same thing if you go in North Virginia, let it load up, you have 383 instances. You also have a T1 over here. If you remember, inside Mumbai, I never had T1. So North Virginia has T1, it has T2, it has T3, and then it has T4 also. Okay, you have these many instances types. Over here, if you go, Mumbai, remember, had 236. Let's go to another region, for example, Stockholm, one of the new regions. And let's have a look at the instance types. Stockholm, because it's the newest region, will have even less instance types as compared to Mumbai. Mumbai had 236, North Virginia had 383, I had T1, I had T2, I had T3. If I go down, I'll see C1, then came C3, then came C4, then is C5. Go to the next page, you will find C6 also over here, C6. So C1, C3, C4, C5 and C6. Higher number means the generation is new, means faster processor, new generation of the family. What does this GAT means? We are going to talk about it shortly. Right now, you see Stockholm only happens to have 136. Mumbai had 283. Mumbai had T2. Mumbai had T4. Stockholm only has T3. It does not have T4 or the latest generation as of now. It is going to come back over here in some time, but for now, if you are creating your data center in Stockholm, you only have T3 instances. No T4, no T2, no T1. Going back to Mumbai. Now, why is this important? Because you see over here, I have a T type of an instance and I have a M type of an instance and a C type of an instance and a R type of an instance, T type of an instance, X type of an instance. What is this first number over here? To understand that, let's go back and talk about the processors. We'll go and see a live example where we'll take the example of AMD. So over here, if you remember, you saw something as T3, and if you go down, you will also find something as T3A. So what's the difference between T3 and T3A? Whenever you see first logic for the instance type, whenever you see anything with a instance, no, I mean T is the family and you see A over there, it means it works on the AMD processors. This thing will come in very handy shortly. So just remember, whenever you see a over there, it means AMD family. Okay, the processor is AMD. If you don't see A, it means it's a Intel. By that logic, C5 means C5 means it's Intel. C5A means AMD processors. Going back, R5 means Intel. R5A means AMD processors. By that logic, let's go for M5. M5 is Intel, M5A is AMD processors. Okay. Now, let's go back to the AMD and EC2 page over here. And this image itself is going to tell you that how AWS and AMD are working together. So if you see, EC2 instances are powered by AMD processors over here. So if you want, you can go and have a look at the brochure, or you can just go and visit this page over here. The same page over here, and you can see the case studies and these things. So AWS offers EC2 instance with this. And how do you know that it works? Because A stands for the AMD one. Now let's go back. You see this compute intensive compute is C. So whenever you see a C instance, it means it's compute. Because you are seeing A, it means it's a AMD processor. General purpose, on the other hand, is a M instance. So if you see M5, it means general purpose with AMD processors. Memory is a R. So R5A means general purpose with AMD instance. Burstable is T3A. And finally, graphics intensive is G4A. Okay, so now if you understand this, just remember anything after a over here means a AMD processor. We will talk about D also shortly, but right now just understand about A means a AMD processor. Then you saw a burstable instance. What is this burstable? Burstable instance in very easy term means I don't know how much performance I am going to need. I might need more performance or I might need less performance. In that case, you can go for a burstable instance type. In simple word, it means that if at all I need more resources, AWS can go and allocate more resources to me. If you want such an instance where the resources can be given to you or taken from you at runtime based on your resource, how much you are using, you can go for a burstable instances. Burstable instances are always referred by T. So you can either go for T2 instance or T3 instance or T3A instance, which is AMD and burstable, or a T4G instance. Now, what is this G over here? So if you want G, you can also say what is this M6G, what is this R6G, and what is this C6G. G is what I told some time back, which is your Graviton processor. C6G will be a ARM processor. G or the Graviton processors are made by Amazon themselves. So till now you have understood M5A, C5A, R5A, T3A means it's a AMD machine. Second, the types of processor are x86 and ARM, and you understand what a burstable and a non-burstable instance is. T type of an instance, whether it is T2 or T3 or T3A or T4, is a burstable instance, which means I can go for 2 CPU, 4 GB RAM, but in case I need more resources, AWS can give it to me. Whereas other instances are known as non-burstable instance. So this is what we have done till now about the instances. Also, various regions have various instance types. For example, North Virginia has the highest of the lot, which is 383. And you can see pretty old instances also over here. For example, T1 Micro, which at that time just had one CPU and 612 MB of RAM. The network performance was very low, and this is the pricing of that. So if you see the same price where you get a T1 Micro, let's go and calculate that. So let's say I go for a T1 Micro. T1 Micro will cost me $0.02 per hour. So let's go and do the basic conversion. So, okay, 0.02, which means it will cost me approximately 1.5 rupee for a day, 36 rupees for a, sorry, 1.5 rupee for an hour, 36 rupees for a day, and 1080 rupees for a month. Remember the number 1080. This is going to cost me 1080. By that same logic, it is having one CPU and half GB RAM. Let's go for the latest one, T4G. T4G Nano is going to cost me 0.004. Remember the amount over there, it was 1080. So let's go and convert that 0.004. It is going to cost me 29 paise for an hour. In a day, it is going to cost me 30 paisa into 30, 7 rupees. In a month, it is going to cost me 210 rupees. T1, which is very old, which is very slow, is costing me 1000 rupees. T4 is costing me 200 rupees. Look for the difference yourself. Ideally, in real life, whenever you go to the better family or better instance family or the faster processor or better processor, it is expensive. In case of AWS, it's the opposite. Better processors means you have to pay less. So let's take an example right now and understand how to bring the pricing of my resources down. So let's take a hypothetical scenario wherein I have to go and let's take I have to work on Apache Cassandra, and that requires a compute centric machine. So if you remember this, if I need better compute power, I generally go for the C type of the instance. Okay, so compute intensive, I go for a C5 instance. So let's go and take that. So I go to pricing calculator and I go and search for EC2 in this case. The pricing change, no, if you have taken, if you have the reserved instance, then you will have to live with it. If you have an on-demand instance, you can remove that and straight away we'll convert it to the new instance type. The pricing doesn't reflect like that. So let's go back and let's say that I am working in North Virginia. Okay, and I'll take a scenario in which okay, we'll take, let's say, C5A X large instance, North Virginia, and let's say I want Linux and I want a C5.X large instance. The calculation that I will do will be for 3 months, which has 4 CPU and 8 GB of RAM. I need one instance which I need on demand, means whenever I want, I can stop it. The pricing of that is $127. So $127 is for a month. Okay, that's a monthly price. Please keep that in mind. We'll also go and convert it 127. It will cost me 9,292 rupees. And let's also open our calculator over here, normal calculator. And let's go and multiply this 9292 multiplied by 36. It is going to cost me 3,34,512 rupees. Let's keep that in number in our head at the moment. Let's just note it down that we will be taking the instance that we took over here for our pricing was. Right now we are seeing how to bring the cost down actually. Okay, so C5X large. So let's say North Virginia, or on the top, let's just go and type C5X large. North Virginia is going to cost me $127. So I just went and converted $127 to my amount, which costed me to 9292, and for 3 years it is going to cost me 3,34,512 rupees for C5X large. Now let's go for the next type. Same instance, let's go and have a look at India. And let's see how we can bring the pricing down. So over here, North Virginia. Okay, over right now, let's be here only because I want to show you one other thing. Right now, this pricing was on demand. On demand means whenever I want, I start, whenever I want, I stop. However, there is another way, something known as a reserved instance, in which case I will take it for a duration of 3 years. I will tell AWS I will pay you the amount straight away, and AWS will say you just have to pay me $1,629. Let's go and convert this to our INR. Okay, what was the amount here? I believe 1629, right? So let's go and convert this amount. 1629. How much is the price now? This was a on demand. And if I go for a reserved instance, which means I am telling AWS I will need it for 3 years and I am ready to pay you upfront for 3 years. In that case, I just have to pay you 1,19,000. By that same logic, inside on demand in North Virginia, I was paying up 3,34,000 for on demand. Reserved is 1,19,000. So now you do understand if you have to bring the pricing down, what you have to do. The first thing that you should do is you should ideally go for a reserved instance. And Amazon gains from it because Amazon knows that you are going to use it also anyhow. Second thing, you gain from it because you end up paying way less than what is expected. However, let's make it even better. So this was North Virginia. Let's go and try the same thing inside Mumbai. So let's go get this and let's put Mumbai over here. And I will see the pricing for on demand and I will see the pricing for reserved. So I am looking for the same C5X large. If I am going for the reserved instance for 3 years, I have to pay $1,680. Let's go and convert that. $1,680 will come to this amount over here. Reserved is going to cost me 1,22,929 rupees. You see, it is 10,000 rupees more expensive if you are taking a reserved. Let's go for on demand and see the price there. So if you go for on demand over here, it will cost you 127.52. Let's go and convert that. 127.52, which comes to 9330.93. Let's go and put that 9330.93. Let's remove that and multiply it by 36. And I will end up paying 3,35,880 rupees. So just by looking at this, you can understand that North Virginia on demand was 3.3 lakh. Here it is 3.3 lakh, but 1,000 rupees expensive. Reserved instance is 3,000 rupees cheaper if I am going in North Virginia. However, this is when you are going for C5X large. I will go and make a small change over here. Instead of going for C5X large, I will go for C5A.X large. Remember, it's your AMD machine. and have a look at the difference it can make just by changing it to an AMD processor. So I go to my pricing calculator. On the top, C5X large is 4 CPU, 8 GB RAM, right? Let's go and make it C5AX large. Again, 4 CPU and 8 GB RAM only. However, if I'm going for on demand, I have to pay just $72. Let's go and convert that. $72 is 5268 only. And if I go and type 5268 into 36, I have to just pay 1,89,648 rupees. On demand is only 1,89,000. Have a look at this amount and have a look at this amount. Let's make it even better. Instead of going for on demand, let's go for a reserved instance, which I go for 3-year full upfront. I have to pay just $1167. Let's convert that. 1167. I just have to pay 85,392 rupees. Now look at the comparison. Inside North Virginia, you were paying 3,34,512 rupees. Inside Mumbai, you end up paying only 85,392 rupees. A instance or the AMD instance in the whole world, they are cheapest in India. So if in case you are looking for higher end machines, go for the A instance or the AMD instance. You will find way difference. The advantage of having this C5AX large is in the same price, you can have 4 instances like this, in which you would have gone for one on demand. You can go and take 4 instances like this, which is C5AX large. Just think about the performance difference it can make to your machine if instead of having one machines, you are having 4 machines. Also, you are actually saving 75% amount just by going for a C5A instance. Whether there is actual any performance change or not, there is not much, to be honest. It's all the same only. But even if there is a performance dip, if you are going for a C5AX large or a AMD processors, if you are not happy, you might go for 2 instances. In that case, you still end up paying 50% less as compared to your Intel processors with better processing power. So this is the first thing that you should understand in EC2. Whenever you have to go and either migrate your machines or create your backend machines and your server machines, go and have a look at the pricing first of all to understand what is the cheapest way. Now you might say that if my customers are based in North Virginia, what advantage will I get by saving the data in Mumbai? Yes, that is the correct answer. You will not get any advantage by that. But if in case you need to have a backup machine running, you will tend to choose the cheapest region because backup should only cost you the least. In that case, you will end up choosing Mumbai, and that to the A instances for your backups. This is the concept on how you can have the pricing or you can save amount when you are working on EC2. This also is my instance types. Now that our basic clarity of the pricing is good, let's go and get started. By the way, you could have also gone for, let's open that. So let's say that if you were working on C5, like over here we had done C5AX large, you could have also gone for C6 actually. So let's have a look, create estimate, EC2. So let's say I'm looking for Mumbai and the quick estimate and here, and let's go for C6G.X large, which is same 4 CPU 8 GB RAM. Let's go and have a look at the pricing. 3 years all up front, and I want a reserved instance. Let's go for this one. I have to pay $842 only. Okay, let's go and convert it. In your mind, you would have already calculated that it is way cheaper. You have to just pay 62,000 rupees. Okay, so C6G.X large, you have to pay just 62,000 rupees. C6G over here, X large is same 4 CPU 8 GB RAM, But how much are you paying on the 842, which is 62,000 rupees? Here you are paying 3,34,000 rupees. Now you are almost saving between 5 times and 6 times for your instance. So this is how you can make your instances look, or the price is less. Okay, so if we have understood about the instance at this moment, let's go back, and we do understand about this. Let's go back and talk about the instances finally. But before I go for EC2 instances, your instance performance depends on various things. First, how much RAM you have. The more you have, the better it is. How much CPU you have, how much cores of CPU you have. And more than that, the thing that bothers, how your data is fetched. The term that we are looking for is latency. You ask me a question, I answer it in 1 minute or in 10 minutes. Low latency is always preferred, which means whenever you are fetching the data from the disk or the storage, the latency should be as low as possible. And how is the data saved inside your disk? It is kept inside your storage. Storage inside EC2 comes inside your Elastic Block Store, which is your EBS. We call it also as EBS. Whenever I say that data is being stored, the data is, in your case, might be stored inside your laptop, inside your hard disk, or if you have a high-end laptop, inside your SSDs. Generally, when you say the MacBooks are faster, a reason for that is they tend to work more on SSDs, or any new generation MacBook that you see are all having SSDs. SSDs are way faster than your traditional hard disk. That is why you say it is faster. The reason is the storage is faster. So first of all, whenever we have to go for an instance, the major thing that we have to worry about is fetching the data from the storage or from the hard disk, which happens via SSDs. So let's go to volumes, which is nothing but my hard disk or my volume inside AWS, and see. First, I will click on create volume. Over here, I will see the various volume types: GP2, GP3, IO1, IO2, cold, throughput, and magnetic. Let's start with the magnetic one, in which case you don't have IOPS also, you don't have throughput also. So ideally, you should not choose magnetic ever. In most probability, in your laptops, you do have a magnetic hard disk at this moment. Okay, next, the general purpose SSD, or known as the GP2 family. This is what AWS gives you by default. And there's a formula that you have to calculate now. Let's start. First thing is, you see your IOPS. It means how many inputs and outputs it can do in 1 second. The base formula is whatever you see over here multiplied by 3. So if you see 100, this is 300. If you see 200, it multiplies by 3 and becomes 600. By that logic, if you see 800, it multiplies by 3 and it becomes 2400. So 2400. Next, you see 3000, which means that even if you are having, so let's go back to 100. So AWS guarantees you that 300 IOPS I will give you at any point of time. However, if you need more IOPS, I might increase it to 3000. They will obviously charge you more for that, but IOPS can be increased to 3000 automatically. So this again is a burstable volume. So I can increase it. Okay, like you saw inside your instance for the T type of instance. So if you have 100, I can make it 300, but I can increase it to 3000. By that logic, if you make it 900, AWS will say I will give you 2700 IOPS, but maximum I can hit is 3000. But what if you go to 1000? Then AWS will say I can only guarantee you 3000 IOPS. Anything above that, above than that, anyhow it's burstable, so you will only get 3000. By that logic, what if you make it 4000? It will go up to 12,000 in this case. Finally, if you go to 6000, it will say that, see, if you are going for 6000, ideally I should give you multiplied by 3, which is 18,000. But the maximum I can give you is 16,000 only. which means the maximum IOPS you can ever get in a GP2 type is 16,000 only, and the range will be 15999 if you are going for a 5333. The moment you make it 5334, it becomes 16,002, but maximum cap is set to 16,000 only. So in that case, the maximum IOPS that your GP2 can give you is 16,000, and whatever is over here, it multiplies by 3, provided you are not exceeding 16,000. By that logic, what if you make it 30 GB? IOPS will go up till, yeah, IOPS should become 100, 30 into 3 is 90, but AWS says minimum I will give you if will be 100 only. So if you go for 40, it becomes 120 multiplied by 3. If you go for 100, it becomes 300 multiplied by 3. However, if you go for 10, it should become 30. But AWS say no, I will give you minimum of 100. This is what is the meaning of this formula over here. Baseline of 3 per GB, so basically multiplied by 3. Minimum I will give you 100. I can increase it to 3000 IOPS. What they haven't mentioned over here is the 16,000 value that you should automatically consider. Next one, you say that I have a scenario in which I need 1000 IOPS. Please remember, I need, okay, let's say 10,000 IOPS you need for that example. Okay. If in case you need 10,000 IOPS, if you remember the formula properly, it should become 3333, in which case it becomes 9999. So you can go for 3334, in which case you get 10,000 IOPS, which means you will end up paying for 3334 GB just to get 10,000 IOPS. You don't want that. You say AWS, I am going to decide my own IOPS. You just have to allocate me. For that, you can go for IO1 right now, in which case you can go for, let's say, 200, and you can also give your IOPS. So in this case, you are telling AWS that, see, 200 is there, I am making it 10,000. If you increase it anywhere, remember the ratio is 1 to 50. So if it is 200 over here, you can go 9,000, you can go 9,001, you can even go 9999, you can even go 10,000, but the moment you make it 10,001, it errors out. So in this case, in the previous example, we were stuck at 3333 GB. In IO1, I can only go for 200 GB, in which case I get 10,000 IOPS. Then comes the next family, which is IO2. IO2 makes it even better. It gives you a ratio of 1 to 50, 1 to 500. So even if you go for 20 GB and you want 10,000 IOPS, that is fine. But the moment you make it 1 to, over here, again, it says the ratio is 1 to 500. So just remember the numbers over here. GP2, 1 is to 3, IO1, 1 is to 50, IO2, 1 is to 500. And this is IOPS only, throughput is not applicable. If you need throughput, in that case, you can go for code STD. In which case the formula is, if you go for 1024 GB, I can guarantee you 12 Mbps and I can go up till 80. By that logic, if you make it 2048, I can guarantee you 24 Mbps and you can go up till 160. That is your code STD. Then you also have your throughput optimized STD, which gives you baseline of 40 per terabyte. So by that logic, if you make it 1024 GB, it becomes 40. If you make it 2048, it becomes 80, and so on. So that's your throughput optimized STD. Magnetic you don't require because it neither gives you IOPS nor gives you throughput. Finally comes the newest generation, GP3, launched in December last year. GP3 is a very beautiful thing. The reason for that is GP3 will anyhow give you minimum of 3000 IOPS. So even if you go for 1 GB, in the previous example, GP2 over here, let's have a look. GP2, 1 GB was costing you, or it was giving you 100 IOPS. By that same logic, GP3 is giving you 3000 IOPS. And GP3 will gives you IOPS also, and it will give you throughput also. Just consider this. There 1 GB was giving you 100. Here 1 GB is giving you 3000. So if it is giving you more, it should also charge you more. So let's go and have a look at it. For that, again, to check it out, we will go for our AWS calculator. Let's open the calculator and look at the normal pricing for 1000 GB of storage. So I click on create estimate. I go for my EC2, configure, and let's go for my storage over here. I have GPU2, so let's say if I am going for 1000 GB, my volume is costing me $114. Same thing if I go for GP3, which is 1000, it is costing me $91. Only $91. Here, GP2 was costing me $114. Think about it. It is costing you $20 less also, 1500 rupees less also, and it is giving you 30 times better performance, which means whenever you go for the new family in AWS, you get faster performance and you end up paying less. This is one of the very prime reasons why people go for AWS. Any new thing that AWS brings comes at a even low price and at better performance. Now, if you were working and you had the base requirement where you said that I have to increase the performance of my machine. So in this case, how much IOPS are you getting? Just 100, right? Let's say you have created it in 1A at the moment. You click on create volume. So this volume has been created for you. Let's go and just name it as V1. Now, if I name it as V1, I am getting 100 IOPS, which means at max one input output I can do is 100. You want to increase the performance of it? Your job is as simple as clicking on actions, modify volume, make it GP3. Earlier it was 100 IOPS, make it GP3. It straight away goes to 3000 IOPS and click on modify and click on yes. This volume which was GP2 from 100 becomes 3000 and this will become GP3 very shortly. It becomes GP3, IOPS changes to 3000. You actually are paying less amount. You are getting 30 times better performance also. So if at all you have to change the volume type henceforth, you know how to do that. For that, you can just click on actions, click on modify volume and give the new volume type whatever you want. Next thing, what if I want to increase the size of my volume? So right now it is optimizing at 99. That is why it is in yellow. Let's say you have to increase the size. You can just click on modify volume and give the new size over there. Let's say 20 GB and click on modify and yes. Now remember that while it is in this yellow color, you cannot modify that volume. Okay. So let it become green right now, after which we'll go and modify it. Though if you want to see it now itself, let's say I am going for 1 GB volume right now and I want to go and make it to 100 GBs. So this volume I'm calling it as V2 over here. If I have to change this 1 GB to 100 GB, I just have to click on actions, modify volume, make it 100 and click on modify and yes. And my volume will automatically go and change to 100 GB. It is as easy as that. Generally, whenever you make a change, it goes to optimizing state where it sticks for some time and in some time it will go to that particular state. So in my case, it will go to 100 GB. Let's go to the next part. Let's say I want to decrease the volume. So let it happen. We are going to come back to this shortly. Before that, let's see one more thing. I might want to take a backup of my volume. So whatever data I have inside my hard disk, I might want to take a backup of it. So how to take the backup? For that, just select the volume, click on actions and create snapshot and give a description. Let's say backup for volume 1 and click on create snapshot. So if a snapshot is created, you will see that this backup has come up here where you can click on snapshots and you see this backup created at 9:56 p.m. is available. Now if the backup is available, using the backup you can go and create the new volume. So let's do that. For that, select the backup, click on actions, click on create volume and give the new. So let's say I'm putting it in GPU2 only and click on create volume. The new volume ending in 409 has been created. For that, you can go to volumes and you can see ending in 409 has been created. Let's go and call this volume as V3. So now you understand, if you have a volume, you can change the type. If you have a volume, you can create a backup as a snapshot. And from the snapshot, you can go back and create a volume again. Also, if you want to change the size, you can do that. If you want to change the type, even you can do that. If you want to change the IOPS, that is also possible. Actions, click on modify volume, give the new IOPS whatever you want, either put it in GP3 or IO1, whatever you want. Just remember that in case of IO1 and IO2, it is expensive as compared to GP3. GP3 because it's the newest one, so it comes to you at less price also, and it's better in performance also. Now we go refresh it and we see that the volumes are still into optimizing state. This generally is in optimizing state only. It takes some time also. So I do understand that there is a volume, but to understand a volume better, you will also have to see that this is available inside a availability zone. These are volumes are created in 1A only. But why is it that it was only created in 1A? The reason is the moment you clicked on create volume, availability zone by default is selected as 1A. You might want to go and change this, and let's say I am selecting 1 in 1B or make it 1C over here and click on create volume. Now if you see, this end volume would be created in 1C, AP South 1C. So let's go and make it V4. By this time, I already see that my first volume, which I had made as GP3, is already into available state, which is blue in color, which means this can be increased. To increase, click on actions, click on modify volume, increase the size to let's say 20 GB and click on modify and click on yes. And now comes the last error that you will see inside the volumes. The thing is, you have a maximum limit for the volumes which you can create every 6 hours. If you keep on modifying it like this, it will put a lock on your account, which means you cannot make a change for another 6 hours. Fine, let it be. But anyhow, this volume I created some time back only. If I want to change this volume, I can click on actions, click on modify volumes, and let's say I am making it to 20 GB. Remember, the lock is on your volume, not at your account level. So anyhow, if I refresh it, this also becomes to yellow state right now. And in this scenario, this volume can be, or it cannot be used by anyone at the moment because it is in optimizing state. Fine, we will come back to this volume right now. Before that, we have one another important thing. You might be having a scenario in which your company says, I want a backup of this particular instance. When I say an instance is always connected to a volume. So right now, let's say the requirement is that you have to go and create the backup of this particular volume every 6 hours. So instead of going and doing it again, what you can do is go to something known as a lifecycle manager. In this case, remember, I had named it as V1, V2, V3, and V4, and there was a big reason behind it. The thing is, whenever you name it like this, no, the tags automatically come. So this tag becomes name as V1, this tag becomes as V2, this becomes as V3, and this becomes as V4. This is very important. Why? Let's assume that I have to take a backup of V1 every 6 hours. But if I take a backup every 6 hours, it means by the end of one day, I will have 4 backups. By the end of 1 month, I will have 120 backups. By the end of 1 year, I will have 1440 backups. What am I going to do with those many backups? I only want the latest 10 backups or 20 backups in case I need it. So in that case, I will have to go and create a backup, and I will also have to ensure that the previous backups which are not required are automatically deleted. For that, you don't have to do anything magical. You just have to go to your lifecycle manager, click on create lifecycle policy and go and create. So let's say I'm creating it for a volume. Let's call it as backup every 6 hours. And this volume is applying to whom? Wherever the name matches V1. By the way, you can also put it for name matches V2. So it will apply to volume 1 and volume 2, both of them. And this backup is created every 6 hours. Okay, so let's go back and just call it as a backup. Let's call it as V1 and V2. Okay, now I might want to take a backup every 6 hours. So let's go and say backup every 6 hours. In which case I am taking a backup every 6 hours, which is starting at, remember this thing is the UTC. So in case you have to start the backup in the night at 12, you should make it 18:30 over here, so that it matches with 0000 in India. And what did I say? I only need the latest 10 backups. So in the retention, you can just go and put it as 10 and done. AWS will automatically create a backup and it will retain the latest 10 backups. Going down, if I want, I can also go and enable cross region apply. This is important because right now my region is AP South 1. But what if something happens to AP South 1 and I need the data? In that case, I am saying create the backup and copy the backup to another region, which is Stockholm, and retain it for 10 days. Done. If you want, I will also copy it to, let's say, Africa, and I will retain it for 10 more days. So this particular volume V1 and V2 will have two backups which are kept every 6 hours, where my 10 latest backups are retained. These backups are also copied to Stockholm and to Cape Town. Also, if I want, I can go and create another schedule. So let's call it like monthly backup. In which case I will take a backup every month on day 1 starting at 18:30 hours, which means 12 in the night, and I need to keep latest 12 backups. So I will keep the backup of every month over here. By that same logic, if I want to go and put the same backup in another region, I can do that also. I will say Stockholm and I will say keep it for 1 year, retain copy for 1 year, in which case I will have 12 backups for the monthly backups also. Next, if I want, I can go and create another additional schedule in which I will say, take it a monthly and on day 1 you keep it, or maybe yearly, or maybe weekly. The concept is you can go and create these policies, in which case at max 4 policies schedules are there. If in case you say that, no, I need more, in that case, you can go and create multiple policies. So what happens is, it says I will take a backup every 6 hours starting at 12 in the night. I will keep the latest 10 snapshots. So if I'm taking a backup every 6 hours, it means in one day I will keep 4 backups. I have to save latest of 10. That is why the list is 2.5 day old. Monthly, I am taking first of every month at this particular time, and I will keep 12 backups. Yearly, I am keeping it on 1st of January every year. So you can go and create the policy as complex as possible depending on your requirement. This thing is comes inside my life cycle managers. So we do understand that there is something known as a volume, there is something known as a snapshot, and there is something known as a lifecycle manager. Snapshots are the backups, lifecycle managers are the automated backups, in which case they are created as well as deleted, and volumes is the data wherever it is saved. This volume, if you remember, we had increased it from 10 GB to 20 GB, and now it is available. If I want to decrease it, you just have to click on actions and modify volume and give the size, and you will see the error. The error is volume can only be increased, it cannot be decreased, which means if it is 20, you can make it 21 very well. But the moment you try to make it 20, 19, 18, you are going to see the error, which means the volume size can only be increased. It cannot be decreased. So that's for my volumes over here. If I want, I can delete the volume by clicking on delete volumes and click on yes delete, and all my volumes are gone. You are going to see a transient state as deleting, though if you go and refresh your page, you won't see any volume existing actually. Now, going back to the instances, we do understand what our EBS is. This will come in very handy for us in some time. Let's go back to our instances right now. And let's click on launch instance. And over here, I see multiple operating systems. Now, as I said earlier, if you are looking for a specific instance, for example, Windows, you can type Windows and you can see Windows 2019, 2016, 2012, 2003, and so on is available. If you are looking for Ubuntu, you can go and type Ubuntu, in which case it will give you Ubuntu 20, Ubuntu 18, Ubuntu 16, Ubuntu 16 over here. If you're looking for RHEL or Red Hat, just go and type Red Hat and it will show you that. Alternate to that, there are quick start AMIs. There are some also the AMIs as marketplace. So in this case, you can take any of these images, RHEL 7, RHEL 8, RHEL 6, and so on. So you are free to choose any of the operating systems that you might need. So let's go back and choose a operating system, in which case I will go and choose a Ubuntu machine, and let's understand what to do. Next step, you select the instance types over here. You can go for a burstable family. You can go for the better compute, better graphics, better processing, normal general purpose M instance. You can go for better RAM and so on. So R5 and these things. Now we do understand that there is T3 and there is T3A. A stands for AMD, T3 stands for Intel. What is this D over here? So ICC5, fine. ICC5A, fine. That's a AMD machine. ICC5D, what is C5D over here? The answer is, if you go for C5, that has your EBS. What is EBS? The volume that we were talking about some time back. The volume where IOPS is multiplied by 3 or ratio is 1 to 50 or 1 to 500. That everything comes inside EBS. However, there are special instances in which the volume is attached with that particular instance itself. This instance is very fast in storage. Now, it is not like it will only be in C series, it can also be in M series. So if we see M5D over here, that is there, it does have the storage. How to understand it? You will see that SSDs are automatically attached, which doesn't mean that if you go for this instance, you will only get this. No, you will actually get two volumes. One which is EBS, which you can change, one which is attached to the instance, which cannot be changed. So you actually end up with two volumes in this case. SSDs are faster, so your instance will be fast. Also, these SSDs are directly added at the hardware layer to your instance, so they are very fast. Okay, so let's go back and again see. If let's take the example of C5 over here. If I see C5, it means Intel. C5A, AMD. C5D, it has volume or disk attached. N means better network. How do we see? C5N is 2 CPU, 5 GB RAM. How much is the speed? Up to 25 Gbps. By that same logic, over here it was only C5D large is only up to 10 Gbps. Over C5N is up to 25 Gbps. So if you need better bandwidth, go for the N instance. Okay, so what are the types? C5 Intel, C5A AMD, C5D disk, C5N better network. And what if you see something like AD? So let's have a look. M5 Intel, M5A AMD, M5AD AMD with disk attached, and M5D, which you already know. Similarly, let's go for R series over here. R5 Intel, R5A AMD, R5 AD, AMD, and disk attached. And then if you see N, it is better network. Okay, so this is what is meant by the instance type. Based on your use case, you might want to go for any of the network or any of the instance type. If you don't know how much it is going to go up or down, go for a burstable instance. If you know that it is a general purpose machine, go for a M instance. If you need database or more RAM, go for R. If you need better compute, go for C. If you need better graphics card or graphics processor, go for a G series. Okay. Also, whether to go for C4, C5, C6. See, C4 and C5 is fine because those are x86. C6 is is your ARM processor. So if your machine and the softwares are made for x86, anyhow ARM won't work only. That is why if you see over here, if I click on previous, let's take this one. Because I had selected x86, that is why if I click over here, I will see T4 is not clickable only. And the reason is these are ARM instances. OS that I have selected is x86. By that same logic, C6 is also not clickable and R6 is also not clickable. M6 not clickable and your R6 is also not clickable because these instances are the Graviton processors. Graviton processors will work on ARM processors only. So the OS has to be ARM and this is not ARM. So to prove that whether it is true, go and select ARM machine, in which case exactly the opposite will happen. Now C6, M6, R6, T4 will be available. T4 available, C6 available, M6 available, R6 available, rest everything is unavailable. Because now you have selected a ARM OS and ARM OS only is T4 or C6 or M6 or R6. So realistically speaking, you should ideally go for x86 machines only because they are faster and most of the programs or the softwares which are written are for this machine itself. Okay, so let's go for this one. Let's say T3A micro or T3A small, 2 CPU and 2 GB RAM or 2 CPU and 4 GB RAM, which is working on EBS and the speed is up to 5 Gbps. Next, configure the instance detail. Here you can select how many total number of instances you want to create in this machine. So let's say I want to create 3 instances in one shot itself. It will say whether you want to create a ASG auto scaling group. We will talk about it later. Right now I have selected, I want 3 instances. Next, inside what network you want to go and create it. This is my network and a subnet. If you select the subnet, all the machines are created in that subnet only. Then do you want to assign the public IP or not? Right now I'm choosing enable because I want the public IP to be allocated. Directory, once you go for directory, we will talk about it. Over here, shutdown behavior, whether it is stop or terminate, which means if in case your machine stops, do you want to just stop the machine or do you want to terminate the machine? Additionally, you can also enable hibernation, which is the same which happens inside your laptops or computer also. You can protect against accidental termination, which means no one can go and terminate your machine. You can go and enable CloudWatch detailed monitoring, in which case CloudWatch is also going to monitor your machine. It's not like it's not going to do if you don't do, only the detailed or the monitoring will be at a more granular level if you enable this. Finally, you have your tenancy. You can run on a shared hardware or your dedicated instance, or finally your dedicated host. Dedicated host means whole server is for you only. Next step, add the storage. This formula I believe you would now understand. If it is 8 GB, IOPS is 100. If I make it, let's say 200, IOPS will increase to 600 and it goes up to 3000. You can go for GP2 or you can go for GP3. In my case, I am going for GP3. The reason is GP3 is cheaper. Also, if you uncheck this button, it means even if you terminate your instance, your machine is not deleted. Encryption, this is important because it means that whatever data you are putting inside your storage or SSD will all be encrypted. If you want, you can also go and add another volume over here and you can give the size of it. Right now, I just need one volume, so I am pretty happy with the 10 GB volume. Next step, you can add a tag. Now, tags are important. You would have seen inside your lifecycle policy. So let's go and put it like I1. This is only going to apply on my instance, not on my volume. Next, I will say something like created by, and I will say Ankit, which has to apply on all of them. Then I will say machine is for what? Service, and I will call it, let's say, uh, Apache web server. Then let's say what is the task it is doing, and I will call it is going and putting a web server, and I'm putting across all three of them. Next, security group. In this step, you tell the machine that what all ports are enabled for the machine. For instance, in my case, I have to go and create a web server. So I need to obviously go and enable the HTTP connection over here. I make it HTTP and I click on anywhere and it is available. Next, I'll also go and enable HTTPS if in case you have to work on HTTP or SSL traffic. If not, you can remove it. Then click on review and launch. In this case, AWS will say that you are creating this machine and these particular ports are enabled for your machine, which is perfectly fine for me. Click on launch. If you have a key pair, it will show up like this. You can also choose to create a new key pair. So let's create a new key pair by the name of, let's say 05032021 and click on download key pair. If it is downloaded, you can click on launch instance, which means now three instances I1, I2 and I3 is launched straight away. So if you see, the name is I1, 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 and the reason for that is that all the machines had the same tags over here. Okay, so right now let me just go and just rename it to I1, I2, I3 so that I can understand it better. So I have instance I1, I have instance I2, and I have instance I3. Now, if the instances are created for me, I might also want to go and log in into the instance to see what that instance actually looks like. To log into the instance, now it is even more easy to log into the instance because you just have to click on the connect button and go to instance connect and click on connect. And inside your browser itself, that particular instance shell is going to open for you. So let's go and just do a sudo apt-get update over here. This is my instance 1, by the way. How to confirm that it is instance 1? First, you can have a look at the instance ID over here. Second way, have a look at the IP 172.31.21.143. Go back to your instance and look at the private IP 172.31.21.143, which means indeed you are inside that instance only. What I will do is I will also go and install web server over there. For that, just go and type sudo apt-get install -y and Apache 2, which means it will go and install Apache web server inside that particular instance. To test it out, you can go open the public IP of that instance here, open a new tab, paste it as it is, and you should see that particular web page coming up. But how do you know that this is your web page only and not anyone else's? For that, on the top, what do you see? Apache 2 Ubuntu default page. And it is saying if you want to change it, you can go to this particular file and change the content. Let's do that. So nano, which is a text editor, give this. And over here, instead of title, go and say instance 1. And if it is all good, just go and refresh the page, and on the top you see instance 1, which means I am indeed connected to instance 1. Let's go and do the same thing for instance 2 also. For that, select the instance, click on the connect button, Click on EC2 Connect and click on Connect. And just go and write the name of the command. For example, sudo apt hyphen get update, and then sudo apt hyphen get install Apache 2. And once that is done, it means this instance will also have my Apache web server installed. To confirm that, just open the IP address of that machine here, this and this. I should see the same thing coming up. But how do I know that you are indeed coming from that server only? I will have to make a change. For that, nano this, and on the top inside the title bar, I will just change it to, let's say, instance 2. And let's go and check that. Refresh the page. On the top, it says instance 2. So indeed, I am connected to that instance, which is working on web server. Next, let's do the same thing for i3 and click on the connect button. Again, the same old story, sudo apt hyphen get update, and then sudo apt hyphen get install -y Apache. Okay, -y is because it won't ask you for the confirmation. If you don't do that, that is fine. It will just ask you to confirm, like I pressed y over here. If you give -y, it won't ask you. It will directly go and install it straight away. Now, again, the same old story. We can go to the IP address over here, this, and I see that I see the same page. So again, let's go and change it here. For that, log to the instance and go over here and just change the instance name to, let's say, instance 3, this, and go back and copy the address and paste it over here. And you should see on the top instance 3. So by now I understand that I can go and create multiple instances, and all the instances have different names over there. They have unique IDs. Now if you have a question, why did you do the same thing thrice? Is there any way of going and doing the same thing again? The answer is actually yes. For that, what I could have done would be, I would have selected I1, I would have selected my actions, gone to image and template, gone to create image, and created a image. Actually, image is a AMI. So let's call it web server hyphen instance 1, and let's give a description, or let's say content for web server with instance hyphen 1, and click on create image, in which case your AMI is created, and that AMI has the data of your instance. It is into pending state. In some time after it goes to active state, you can find it at two places. First, you can find it inside your AMIs. Second, you can go to instances, click on launch instance and go to my AMIs. It will show up over here also the moment it is created. We are going to see that shortly after it is available inside the AMIs. Before that, let's go to snapshots and see one thing. If you remember, we had gone to Lifecycle Manager and we did see that my snapshot can be copied from one region to another. There is another way of doing that. You could have gone to your snapshots, action, copy, and given the new target region. For example, over here, you can select any region that you want. For example, Stockholm, destination region is this. If you want, you can encrypt the snapshot also. You can give a description also. Please remember, a volume cannot be copied. However, a snapshot can be copied. But now if you understand, snapshots and volumes are not that difficult, because from a volume I can create a snapshot at any point of time, and from a snapshot I can create a volume at any point of time. So let's go back to our volumes where I see all the volumes over here. Let's go back to our AMIs and it is still into pending state. Let it happen. We are going to come back to this in some time. But before that, let's go to our instances, and I do see my instances over here. Now, assuming a scenario where my website actually has to work. So I can give I1, I2, I3 over here, and I will see that it will start to plot the graph of CloudWatch for all of my machines over here, I1, I2, I3. If you don't see much data over here, the reason for that is that in this case, you have just recently started the instance. As and when you have more data, the graphs will automatically start to show up over here. So let's go back to our instance where my website was pointing to instance I1. So if someone opens this IP address over here, they will see my website coming up. But what if by mistake my instance is stopped? So let's say someone went and did a stop instance. In which case, if someone goes and tries to open my website, it will say, just go and refresh it. And in some time after the instance is stopped, it will say that the web page is not found. So let's just wait for it to stop right now. So another way to do that, go to incognito window and just hit that address. And you will see nothing is actually loading at this very moment. The reason for that is my instance actually has stopped. And the instance stopping is not that bad for me, as much as this, that the moment you stop your instance, your IP address also goes off and you are allocated a new IP address. In short, if someone goes and stops your instance, or even if your instance is actually stopped, your IP address goes off. Here, the public IP address goes off. More than that, anyone who is trying to reach your website or your web page will see a index not found page. So if you hit this address, they won't actually see anything, and that's problem for me. So how do I fix this? The answer is load balancer. So now what I will do is I will say that instead of going only to I1, you can distribute the load between I1, I2 and I3. And I know that at a moment, either I1 or I2 or I3 would be working. So in this scenario, whatever is working, my load will be distributed to that particular instance. So let's go and start to work on that. For that, I will go to my load balancers over here. And I will see three options. I have application load balancer, I have a network load balancer, and I have a classic load balancer. Let's go and start to work on all of them one by one. So for classic, I click on create. Here I give the name of the load balancer. Let's call it website-CLB or website-classic load balancer. Load balancer it's itself working on port number 80, and my instances are also working on port number 80. Next, security group. I will create a new security group. Let's call it as website-CLB or classic load balancer. Let's make it anywhere. Security setting, health check. This all looks good. Next, add EC2 instance. I am adding all the instances, and click on add tags, review and create, which means that your classic load balancer has been created. So in this case, I will see that my machines are right now out of service, and the reason for that is it is still going and instance registration is stopping, is doing that. So ideally, my machines, once they go and everything works fine, I will see that my instance on my load balancer will start to work. To test it out, you can open the DNS name over here And you can hit this and you will see now it is pointing first of all to instance 2. The moment you refresh it, it becomes 3. The moment you refresh it, it doesn't go to anywhere because now it has gone to I1, which is not working. But let's go and refresh it. I see I3. If you keep on refreshing it, you will see it goes to those instances whatever are working at that point of time. So I have I2 and I3, which means my load balancer is going to point either to I2 or to I3 at that very moment. Now I will just go, and because this instance is in stopped state, I'll go and start the instance over here. Let it get started. In the meantime, let's go to our next load balancer, something known as the application load balancer. For that, I will click on load balancer, click on application load balancer and create, and call it like, let's say, web server hyphen ALB or application load balancer. My load balancer itself is working on port number 80. Next, I will select the VPC where my machines are actually kept. So it happens to be in this VPC, but I have to give the AZs or the availability zones also. Remember, if you select one of them, you cannot unselect them. However, if you don't select them, later you can go and select them. But once you select, again you can't unselect. So in any scenario, if a load balancer has been created for a AZ, there is no way to remove that then. Okay. Now, if you want, you can also go for a global accelerator. Let's do that right now and call this accelerator as global, or let's call it as web server hyphen global load balancer or accelerator. Okay, web server hyphen GLA. Next, security settings, the same old story. Security groups, the same old thing. You can go and select this one also, or this one also, or this one also, or any of the security group. In my case, let's go and create a new one only. So let's call it ALB hyphen network hyphen web server, or ALB hyphen web server. And let's create created on 05 hyphen March hyphen 2022. And it has to go and enable port number 80 on everywhere and click on routing. In this case, you will have to go and create a target group. So let's put the name as this, and I am saying this is pointing to an instance. By the way, it can be on IP or on Lambda function also. I am selecting instance in this case. Next, register targets. You can select whatever instances you want over here. So right now all the three instances are working. So I have selected all three of them. Then click on review and click on create. In this case, unlike a CLB, it is not going to ask you many things. You have directly gone and straight away created a application load balancer. By the way, while this application load balancer is being created, let's go back to our CLB and open the DNS name here. So let's hit this. I point to I1, refresh I3, I2, I1, I3, I2. Have a look at this part over here. So it goes to 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2. It goes in that order, which means first it goes to I1, then it goes to I3, then it goes to I2. And that's the reason why I had named it as I1, I2, I3, to show to you that indeed the traffic is going to these three instances in real time. It goes to I1, it goes to I2, it goes to I3. Now, if any of the instance is not working, in that scenario, it will not go to that instance. That's it. Okay, so going back now, I have my load balancer, which is a classic load balancer. I have a load balancer, which is an application load balancer. There is not much changes between them. Application load balancer is better than a classic in the way that application load balancer is the new type of load balancer. Also, it will cost you less as compared to classic load balancer. Second thing, in classic load balancer, you can directly go and add the instances by click on edit, and you can remove whatever instances you want, and you can click on save. In this case, this instance will be removed from the load balancer. However, in application, you cannot do it directly like that. Rather, you can go to your listeners over here. You see that it is pointing you to this particular target group. Click on the target group, and then you can go and add or remove the instances from the target group. How? Click on targets, Click on whatever you want, register, deregister, and click on deregister. In that case, this instance will be removed from that load balancer. So that's the difference between your classic load balancer and your application load balancer. In classic, you can directly remove anything. In application, you can't directly remove, rather you will have to remove it from the target group. Okay. Anyhow, the concept of the load balancers remains the same, whether you are working on your this load balancer or your application load balancer. By the way, this was website hyphen CLB, right? Classic load balancer. Let's go and see the same thing for my ALB or application load balancer. Let's go to the DNS name or click on the copy button here and click this and press enter. Have a look, it says instance 1. Refresh. 3 2 1 3 2 1 3 2. So this is also following the same path. First traffic goes to 1, then it goes to 3, then it goes to 2, then 1, then 3, then 2, and so on. So that's the sequence it is taking, which means my instance 1 is having the fastest performance, then 3, then 2. Anyhow, doesn't matter because your messages are being routed to those particular instances. So this is my application load balancer over here, or ALB. Next, if I want, I can also go and create something known as a NLB or a network load balancer. For that, just click on create, give a name. So let's say web server hyphen NLB, which is internet facing, which is inside this VPC, and I am selecting whatever subnets I want, 1A, 1B, 1C. Next, this is forwarding to a target group. If you don't have a target group, click on a target group and create that target group now. This, if you remember, we had already done it inside our application load balancer, but that's fine. You can go and give it again. So let's call it like network load balancer hyphen target group hyphen web server, which is working on port number 80. Next, here you will have to go and register the instance. It remains the same in all the places. Click on create target group. Now that the target group NLB-TG-web server has been created, go back to your this and you won't see it. The reason is refresh it once. And now you are going to see it. Click there and just click on create load balancer. So these load balancers actually are pretty easy as compared to your classic load balancer. In this case, you just have to go and create a target group and everything is happening by the target group itself. Now click on view load balancer. And now you will see your third load balancer, which is your network load balancer, which is into provisioning state right now. Why it is into provisioning? For that, click on listeners over here. Default action is this, click over there, and the instances are still in initial because the target registration is in progress. So the load balancer has to confirm if the instances are actually working at this moment or not. So for that, it says the registration is in progress. Going back to my load balancer, this is still in provisioning state. In some time, it will come up after that, after which we go to description over here, click on the DNS name over here, click this, and once I hit enter, I should see some things coming up. Right now, it says address couldn't be found because it is still into provisioning state. So that's the concept of my three different load balancers: network, application, and classic. Now, over here, when we were creating the application load balancer, we had done a thing where we had gone and created something known as a global accelerator. Global accelerator actually can be thought as the accelerators or the load balancer at a global level. To check the global accelerator, just go to services and type global accelerator. So what happens is now instead of pointing to one specific region only, rather I am pointing to AWS all the regions. And I am telling AWS that I happen to have a load balancer over here. If in case someone is requesting the data, you can directly point it to my place over here. So you see, I do have the global accelerator, this one, and I have web server -GLA. So first of all, this one is not required. This I had created on March 3. Let's go and delete it. You cannot directly delete it. First, you will have to go and type delete. Click on delete. This one anyhow is there already. You can go click this here, this, and hit enter, and you will see instance 3. Remember, this is at a global accelerator, means it is working throughout the world. Refresh it, you will see 2 1 3 2 1 3 2 1. So in this case the path actually has changed. Earlier it was 1 3 2, now it is 3 2 1. Doesn't matter, anyhow I understand that my instance, have a look here, and I'm pressing the refresh button. It means that my instance is actually being forwarded to multiple places. So that's the 1 2 3 or whatever region you have selected. So going back, by this time my network load balancer is still not up, which means over here this would still be into the provisioning state. So if it isn't active, let's go back, hit this here, and I should see my web server coming up shortly. So that's the concept of your first application load balancer, network load balancer, and your classic load balancer. Okay, now global accelerators are pretty expensive, and how much they are expensive, for that let's go to the billing dashboard. And have a look. So global accelerator itself for a day or something did cost me 93 cents. That is how expensive those are actually. Okay, so until required, just don't go and create the global accelerators just like that. Okay, now if you want to delete the load balancers, you can do that straight away over here by clicking on actions and clicking on delete. But before we delete that, we have one final thing to do over here, and that is I have 3 instances at the moment. I also happen to have AMI. By this time, the AMI should be available. It is. If I want to launch an instance from this very AMI, I can either select the AMI and click on launch, and I can launch a machine as it is, which will be replica of my I1. Alternatively, I could have gone to my instances over here, click on launch instance, and on the left I will see my AMIs, and I see my AMI now showing up over here. So that is also a way by which you can go and create the instance. But right now we are more interested in one specific scenario, and that is right now I have 3 instances which are connected to my load balancer. What if the load on the 3 instances is pretty high and I need more number of instances? It's not that difficult to do, because now that you already have a AMI with you, you can go and launch an instance straight away. And you can go and add it to the load balancer by going to the target groups and adding that machine to the load balancer. If it is an application or a network, in case of a classic load balancer, you can directly go and add it to your EC2 instance. So if it's a load balancer or if it's an instance and an AMI, I can do it directly. But what if I don't want to do it directly and I want AWS to automatically do it for me? So here what we will be doing will be, let's say that the load on my machines is more than 80%. In that case, I want AWS to increase the machines to 5. If it goes down, I want AWS to decrease the machine to 1. And these things should happen automatically for me. And these things, if you want, can also be added to the load balancer. So what I want to do is, I want to automatically scale up or scale down my machine. This thing is known as auto scaling, which is available over here. Generally, you use load balancers and auto scaling together. In auto scaling, we do two things. First is what to auto scale. Second is when to auto scale. What to auto scale means, what are we going to scale? I should have a base machine which I have to scale up or down. That you already have because you already have the AMI. Second is when to auto scale. That comes inside your ASG or auto scaling group. Let's get started. First, go to launch configurations here and then go and create a launch configuration. Like I already have two over here. Let's go and create one where I click on launch configuration, and let's call it like web server. And if I want the AMI, now my AMI, I already have it, so I'll just choose that AMI. Next, what to auto scale, what is the instance types? I will say I want a T3A. And why? Because that's the cheapest of them. So T3A small, let's say. Next, if you want to monitor, if you want the EBS, if you want to add the volumes which you have done, if you want to create a new security group, and inside this security group, you will also have to go and enable the port, which is port number 80, because this is a web server. So done. Okay. Next, if you want, you can also go and create a key pair, which means if anyone has to log into the machine, they can do it directly via this. Now, the safest way to create a machine is to not even go and create a key pair. So if you don't create a key pair, in that case, no, you also cannot log in into the machine, because the key pair is used to log in. Key pair is not there only, so no one can log in into the machine. Consider it like this. You have your ATM card and you haven't generated the PIN number of that ATM card. It means you can't take out the money. More than that, no one in this world can take out money. So that's the safest way to create a machine. Now, if you say, what if I have to do a modification? The answer is no worries. Terminate that instance. Take your I1, log in into I1, make the changes into I1, go and create a new AMI, repeat the process. That's the safest way. But still, if you say that, no, I want to directly make the changes inside the machine, which is not advisable, you can go and create the key pair with whatever you have. Like I had this. In my case, I will just go and say proceed without a key pair and click on create launch configuration. Now, once the launch configuration of web server has been created, you can click on actions and create an auto scaling group directly from here. Alternatively, you can go to auto scaling groups over here and you can tell AWS when to auto scale. Have a look at this image. You are creating a ASG or auto scaling group. You are saying minimum to I need one anyhow. But if the load is more, you can increase, but to what limit will you increase? Maximum go up till 4. Initially start with 2. If no load is there, go down to 1. But if too much load is there, maximum go to 4, and that's it. This is known as ASG or auto scaling group. So let's go and create one. Click on create auto scaling group and let's call it like web server hyphen auto scaling group. Here you can choose a launch template. Right now we had created a configuration, if you remember. So switch to configuration and select the configuration. My configuration was named as web server, which is for T3A small. I don't have a key pair and I'm pretty happy with that. Next, it should be created inside what also. If you say I will be starting with these instances and I will create the instance, where do you want to create the instance? The answer is I will select 1A and 1B and let's say 1C. So it will create across all the 3 ACs. Next, if you want, you can attach it to a load balancer, in which case it can be added to whatever target groups you have done. Or you can choose a classic load balancer if you have. In this case, if the load is more, it will automatically be added to your load balancer. If the load is less, it will automatically remove. You can also make the application or the NLB target group. So we had created an application load balancer web server over here. Okay, so that is a way. Or if you want, you can go and create a new load balancer also. Okay, so let's select this one. Okay, I had selected actually ALP web server TG. Next, desired capacity, I say that, see, minimum to I will need 2 for sure, or minimum I will need 1 for sure. Maximum you can give me 4, but I will try, and you should ideally give me 2. If there is no load on the server, go down to 1. If there is very heavy load on the server, go up to 4, but don't go above that. Next, if you do, you can also add the notifications, in which case a message will be sent to whatever email IDs you have selected over here. Okay, I am not adding it, though if you want, you can click on add notifications and do that. Click on next. If you want to add a tag, you can do that. Let's say created by and this one, which will also be added to the instance. Now, because you are added to the instance, you can call event and call it as auto scaled instance. so that just by looking at the tag, you can understand that this was created automatically by AWS. Now, next, if you create and everything looks good, you can just go and click on create auto scaling group, which is going to go and add the instances to your load balancers automatically. Minimum desired is 2. Right now it says updating capacity because it is saying that whether it is actually required also or not. Now at any point of time you want to change anything, you can go to monitoring, refresh details, and you can see it automatically. To see more about that, you can anyhow go to your load balancers over here and go to your application load balancer. So my AS, so let it load up. My application load balancer or ALB was over here. My listeners are over here, which is being forwarded over here. And then I have my targets over here. So if you see, because I had said 2 instances minimum are required, in this case AWS is automatically adding the 2 instances over there, which are healthy at the moment. Okay, so the instances are created, which means if I go back to my EC2 instance, I should actually see 5 instances coming up. By the way, this instance has a public IP here. If I go here, hit this, it is showing me instance 1. Second, this instance is also showing me instance 1. This, by the way, instance is the safest instance in this world. The reason is if you click on connect over here and you try to connect to it by anything that you want and click on connect over here and do this, it is going to get stuck over here. You yourself cannot make a connection with the instance. You can be assured that no one in this world can make a connection with this instance. That is the advantage you get if you don't select a key pair. And now if you say that, no, I have a problem, in that case, no worries. You can go and click on I1, make a connection with that instance. Once you make a connection with the instance, you can go and make whatever changes you want in that instance. This connection, let it happen. Once it is established, you can make a connection. Once connection established, you can go and make the change. Once the change is done, you can go and create the new image of it by actions over here, images in template, and create image. Once that image or that new image is created, the only thing that you have to do is go to your launch configuration and just modify the AMI ID of that, and you are good to. And that's how you go and create auto scaling groups and you add it to your load balancer. Now, this step that we have done is very important, by the way. The reason for that is, assume that you have a big sale on Christmas. If the load is more, you don't have to sit on the computer and increase the machines. If the load is less, you don't have to sit on the computers and remove the machines. Rather, AWS will automatically do it for you. If the load is less, it will bring it down to 1. If the load is more, it will bring it up to 5. And you have more, no worries. Just go to launch configuration and you can go and change the values for maximum and minimum, whatever you want. You have your auto scaling group over here. Let's have a look. This is my auto scaling group. Over here, this is the machine. This is the minimum capacity. Click on edit. Now, the only thing that you have to do is, today load is more. You can go maximum up to 10. Done. Now AWS will automatically scale up to 10. Then load is less, go and make it 4. You see, you are not going and creating the instances and this. You just have to make a small change over here. In ideal scenarios, going up to a maximum capacity and just changing it should ensure that things are automatically working. One more thing. Inside this load balancer, if you see over here, my application load balancer rather, we had started with 2 instances. But why does the target group still says 5? Shouldn't it be 2 only? The reason for that is, okay, let's go here. Let's go to listener and go to the group. The reason is over here, let's go to target, and how many instances do I see? 5 actually. But why are these instances still added? Because your auto scaling group can only go and add or remove something which it has created. It cannot go and remove anything which was there earlier. This I1, I2, I3 was created earlier by me. So target group can't go and remove those instances. If target group over here or auto scaling group goes and creates something, it can very well go and remove that. So for now, let me just go and remove I1, I2, I3, click on deregister, and over here it will start draining, and in some time I will see I will only have these two instances. Now in ideal scenarios, to create the complete infra, because I already have these instances I1, I2, I3, I already have the web server up and running. I can just go I1, I2, I3 and terminate the instances, and that's it. Instance state over here and click on terminate the instance. I don't even need those instances now. So now it gives you the error. And what is the error? This cannot be terminated because the instance termination is still active. We will go about it in a moment. Before that, let's go and have a look at this graph over here. You see now at this moment, you will start to see the graph actually going up and down for each of the instances which are created. I1, I2, I3, the load slowly went up, network packets slowly went down, CPU credits is going up, usage is going down, and so on. Going back to my I1, I2, I3, it says that you cannot terminate it because the termination protection is enabled. Where did this or where did we do this? The answer is when I had clicked on launch instance and I had selected my instance and I went to configure instance detail, over here I had done this, protect against accidental termination, which means now even I cannot terminate the instance, or rather I cannot terminate the instance until I disable that property. So let's do that. For that, click on actions, click on instance setting. You will see change termination protection, and let's disable that. Similarly, let's do that for I2 now. Actions, settings, termination protection, uncheck and save. Finally, let's do the same for I3 also. And save. Now if I1, I2, I3 is there, you can choose on instance state and click on terminate instance and terminate these machines. By the way, my other two machines are still up and running. They are shutting down or the instances are being terminated. Let's go back to my load balancers now. My classic load balancer should automatically start to tell me that the instance checks are failing. My target group of application load balancer doesn't have it only anyhow. I had removed it some time back. So let's go to the ALB first of all, and let's go to the listeners and go to the target group. You see these two instances are draining right now, which means they are gone. Now, if everything is good and I go to back to my EC2 and I go back to my load balancers and application load balancer and I copy that and paste it over here, I should still see instance one. Remember now, I am not controlling anything. This instance, not even I can log in. This is automatically being forwarded to the two automated instance which AWS has created. This is how you create the infrastructure in AWS by which automatically things are being deployed, automatically the servers are running, they can scale up, they can scale down. AWS is taking care of that. My code base is in my AMI, and AMI is automatically being used by my auto scaling groups and load balancer. This is how the complete thing will come together. By that logic, let's go to my classic load balancer and I see 0 of 0 instances in service. Why? Because I had terminated the instance and nothing is there. By the same logic, if I go back to my NLB and I click on listener and I go to my target group, here also I won't see anything because I don't have only any instance. But still, there is no worries. You can go to your auto scaling group over here and you can create a new auto scaling group for network or whatever load balancers you have. So that is a way by which you create the deployments or the machines, ensuring that these particular machines are automatically scaled up, scaled down, and you can change the minimum and max. Now let's say that the load is very less, and because you have set desired, so AWS is actually keeping 2 instances, but in some time if there is no load on the machines, it will go down to 1 automatically. Finally, once everything is done, so ideally don't delete it, but in scenarios where it is no longer required, you can type delete over here and click on delete. Now, if you delete it, the auto scaling group goes off. Simultaneously, if you want, you can also go and delete the launch configurations if you so need to. Okay, this is gone. Auto scaling group would be deleting still because the instances are still attached to that. So the moment you go and delete your auto scaling groups, the instances are gone. Now we will also go and delete our load balancers because they are no longer required. Select actions, delete, and yes, delete. All gone. Target groups, if you want, you can go and delete them also as well. So my target groups, load balancers, launch configurations, auto scaling groups, everything is deleted. Only auto scaling group will take some time. It's the same as your draining of the instances because it is actually maintaining so many instances that it takes time in getting deleted. So it's going to take time. Eventually you will see that your instances here are also deleted. Okay, going back to my global accelerator. This global accelerator was pointing to my application load balancer, but that application load balancer no more exists at that moment. Please note that in case of a global accelerator, you are pointing to US West 2 automatically. So you can be in whatever region in this world, but the moment you go for your global accelerator, you will automatically go to Oregon only. So now if you want, you can go and delete it, though it would have automatically understood that I will have to go and delete the global accelerator because the load balancer is automatically gone. This, by the way, is how you go and work on EC2 in real time. Okay, so these instances, if you want, you can terminate them, or anyhow, they will automatically be terminated in some time. Okay, they should have started to stop by now. Okay, once everything is good, you can ensure it is there. Let's go back to our volumes, what we had created. And if in case it's not required, you can go and delete the volumes. Please remember, deleting the volume does not delete your snapshots. Snapshots are independent of your volume, just like your DynamoDB or just like any of the backups in any of the databases that you have created. So no volume over here, fine. If I have a snapshot, it will continue to remain okay. Always until I go and delete it myself. It will though again come back if in case it is either inside my lifecycle manager or it won't be deleted if I already have a AMI which is using that. So if you remember, I had created a AMI for the web server instance, which I had used in my launch configuration. So removing that is just deregistering it, and you can click on continue. And if that is gone, your snapshot is still there, by the way. So it's like, what if I accidentally delete? So if you accidentally delete, then in that case your AMI is there. If you still accidentally delete your AMI, still the data is in the snapshot. And if you accidentally delete it, then you might have copied it to a different region. And if that is also not there, then yes, indeed your data is lost. Else in other cases, your data is not lost. It will still be there only. Okay, so this is how you work on EC2.